Hey, dethroners. Welcome back to the Dethroning Your Inner Critic YouTube channel. I'm Joanna Kleinman, psychotherapist, empowerment coach, and CEO of the Dethroning Your Inner Critic coaching and consulting company. And today I want to share with you 9 truths that will change your life. Now, these truths are based on my 30 years of coaching tens of thousands of people, the hundreds of hours I've spent inside of my own personal growth journey, and the over 300 books that I've read. And of course, it's impossible to encapsulate all of the deeper wisdom that's in the foundation for all of the work that I do, but I wanted to share some of the most important truths that have changed my life, as well as the clients that I have had the privilege of serving for all of these years. So let's just dive right into it. So the first and maybe most important one is to trust your intuition over your anxiety. This was certainly a pivotal turning point in my life when I really started understanding how to tune into my intuition and how to use my intuition to really override my anxiety. Because let's face it, my anxiety is my automatic. And for most of my life, I didn't even know that I had anxiety. I just thought that that was my, that was me, right? I would overthink things, overanalyze things, right? Have a lot of stress and worry, have my mind kind of be circling and spinning in right thoughts that would lead to a lot of uncomfortable body sensations, a lot of uncomfortable emotions, a lot of fantasizing about the future. And so for most of my life, I let that automatic mind run the show, okay? Which is why now, as I support people, the thing that is the most important is that you understand the difference between what is your automatic mind and what is the mind of your true self. Why does your mind keep speaking what it speaks? And how long has it been there? What does it say? Why does it say it? Who triggers it? What triggers it? Because that's the very thing that keeps you in the same kind of broken record emotions, keeps you in the same broken record behaviors. And it is those thoughts, beliefs that create those emotions, that create those behaviors, that produce the outcome of your life. And where we do one thing is where we do everything. So really understanding how to let your intuitive self be the guide over what you might have mistaken as your true self is a game changer, okay? And one of the things that it's done for me is to really be able to live my life in this very moment. This leads me to number 2, and that is to find the perfection in the present moment. And I don't mean perfection like everything is fine, but there's this wonderful saying by Byron Katie. She says, well, other than what you're thinking, are you okay? Think about that for a minute. Other than what you're thinking, are you okay? So just this past weekend, I had this profound moment where I realized that the very moment that I was in was absolutely perfect. I was with my husband. We were out to dinner celebrating our 27th wedding anniversary. And I was reflecting on all of the work that we put into ourselves and our relationship throughout the years. Because those of you that are married, you know that it takes a lot of work to be able to cultivate and create a conscious partnership. And, it's definitely been a wild ride. And here we are 27 years later. So I'm sitting there reflecting. And in that moment, I realized that the only thing that ever robs me of my peace and creates my anxiety is when my mind goes down the rabbit hole of automatic thoughts. And remember, our mind is always going to run on autopilot. We're not going to change what our mind says when it's running on autopilot. In fact, I know for me, the bigger my life gets, the louder my autopilot mind becomes. But here is the game changer. When you know that your mind is on autopilot, when you can spot that immediately, now you have the power that most people don't have. Most people do not even know that they're living on autopilot. They just listen to the 60,000 thoughts a day and they take guidance and they believe that that's them. You have a profound superpower when you're able to understand, oh, wait, that's not me. That's my automatic mind. I see it. I put it right here on the palm of my hand. I see you. I hear you. And I can unhook from you in the moment that you start speaking to me. And I can actually tune into being present in this very moment. And that changes my whole perspective. Because when I'm in my autopilot mind, I can't see the blessings in my life. I can't find gratitude. But when I'm in the present moment, there it is right there for me to see. So that leads to number 3, which is gaining freedom from autopilot thinking, right? Now, I, like so many people, used to believe that once I reached a certain point in my life, once I reached certain goals, once my kids were more established, once my business was more established, that my mind would come to a place of peace on its own. But now I see that's not the case. Because no matter where we are in life, there's our automatic mind. It will always find what we need to fix, what we need to change, what we need to work on. So the freedom really comes from knowing that all of my power to create my life doesn't come from that old mind. All the power for your life does not come from your automatic mind. It does not come from overthinking. It does not come from strategizing. It does not come from being driven. Now, some of you might feel like you're stuck in this ongoing feeling of dissatisfaction, worry, discontent, overwhelm. And because of that, you might have lost your spark. Okay. You might not even know what you're really here on this earth to do. You don't know what direction you're supposed to take or where your life is headed. Okay. And a lot of you believe that you've got to figure this all out. But see, I want to remind you of something. All right. You're not stuck. Your automatic mind is stuck. You are not stuck. And there is a deeper wisdom that you can access when you stop letting your automatic mind run the show. And this leads me to number 4, which is be your own inner lighthouse. See, you have the power to become your own lighthouse. So we have this inner lighthouse that's always shining its light. But sometimes we're so lost in the dense fog that our automatic mind creates that we don't see it. That doesn't mean that it's not shining, okay? See, we're never alone. We're never actually lost. We're always being guided by an inner lighthouse, but we've got to be able to access that. So in order for you to have access to your inner lighthouse, you need to be able to distinguish what thoughts and beliefs you're listening to and mistaking for the truth. And I'll give you a hint. Most of those thoughts and beliefs that you're listening to and mistaking for the truth live somewhere in future. Okay? You're having thoughts and beliefs that are about what your future is going to be, or could be what your past already was. And I want to remind you that your past is dead and only exists in your mind, and your future is a fantasy that only exists in your mind. So you have to be willing to first examine your inner life instead of just automatically having one foot in the past and one foot in the future. Okay, this is a little gross, but what I always say is if you've got one foot in the past and you've got one foot in the future, you're kind of pissing on your present, right? So, how you find a path forward when you're unable to see a clear path is going within. This is how you start to see what it is that you really want out of life instead of making choices and decisions based on a fear, based on a fantasy of what you think your future should be, or based on ideas of what your past life was. Now, most people sail through life. They don't ever really understand what is shaping how they feel and how they behave and what's guiding them in the directions that they're moving in. So to be your own lighthouse, you have to be willing to understand that there are a number of things that are guiding you right now that you don't even recognize are there. So when you can understand what those things really are, now you're able to learn from them, to actually use those things that are in your blind spot, use them to your benefit, right? Because you can start to see not just the beliefs, but actually the people in your life, the decisions you've made, the fear that could be pushing you in the wrong direction in your life. So when you start to clearly see and distinguish lots of unexpected forces that shape how you think, how you feel, how you behave, you can literally get 20 years of your life back. Think about that for a minute. Being able to clearly see and distinguish very unexpected forces that shape how you think, how you feel, and how you behave, you can get 20 years of your life back. So for those of you who think your life is just going to continue to go in the way that it's always gone, you have no idea how powerful you really are. And that leads me to number 5, which is to uncover what lies hidden. See, so much of what goes on is really hidden from us. And it is essential that we go below the iceberg. Okay. See, our life, right? Life as we see it, it's just the tip of the iceberg. That's what we see, right? There's only a little bit that's above the surface of the water, but a lot of really fascinating, cool, interesting stuff is hidden below in our unconscious mind, right? And if we're just looking at our life from this vantage point and we're just looking at what's above the water, everything else is hidden from us. So I want you to understand as much of what's going on under the surface of the water and how it's shaping things in your life in ways that you don't even recognize. Okay. See, here's an example. So many people think we have to drive life. We have to be able to have this clear plan, make things happen. And I used to think this way. I used to believe this in my life, right? I was driven to prove myself. I was driven to reach my goals. Now, that might work to some extent. But at some point, that way of living becomes bankrupt. It becomes overwhelming and exhausting, which leads me to truth number 6, which is to be called, not driven. I don't want to be driven. I want to be called. And I want you to create your life from being called, not driven. Because when we're driven, we're really using insecurity and fear. We're really saying to ourselves, my insecurity and fear of not being enough is the thing that's pushing me to get to the next level. That's your automatic mind. That's the part that's hidden below the surface. And that's how most people are, especially people who we see as successful. That's how they're going through life. They're driving life. And if you are having to constantly prove yourself, and you might not even realize that you are, but if you are constantly feeling the need to prove yourself, you're certainly not being guided by your lighthouse. And what you're creating is a frantic and hectic life. And then wondering why you're so overwhelmed, why you're so depleted, why you're so exhausted, and why you're so unhappy, and why you're not lit up by the life that you've created. And of course, that has a ripple effect. That has a ripple effect in our relationships with our significant others, with our children, with ourselves, with the most important people. And certainly, it has a ripple effect in the results that we're able to produce. So when we're operating with a different mind, when we're calm and centered and can clearly see the inner lighthouse that's guiding us, that is how we continue to use ease and flow in everything that we're creating. Which leads me to truth number 7, which is a big one for all of us, I think. And that is to have patience for your seeds that you've planted to germinate and grow. See, the reason that you might feel unsettled is because you're not supposed to settle for an autopilot life. So what are you trying to create right now? What is the life that's calling you? And have you planted some seeds, but you're feeling really frustrated because you haven't seen much growth? Do you feel like you've been putting in a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort into something, but you're now feeling like your efforts are a waste of time? Now, I am all too familiar with this, okay? If you are there and you're feeling unsettled, you're on autopilot and still believing that you're the driver. And a lot of times we plant seeds and we've got to tune into some really significant patience to let those seeds germinate. Okay. Now, what happens when we're on autopilot is we're focused so much outwardly, right? On that outer life. So we say, oh, well, if only something would be different for my business, or if only that seed would turn into something, or if only my spouse would be different, or if only my kids would be different. If only my boss would be different, if my bank account would be different, if I had more clients, if I made more money, if I had more confidence, if I believed in my power. And so here's the truth. If you keep wanting that and thinking that that's going to be the thing that's going to fulfill you, life is going to give you more and more and more of what you want, but don't have. And we don't have the capacity to shift anything outward. We don't have the capacity to shift other people. We don't have the capacity to shift the results. We don't have the capacity to have other people make the decisions we want them to make, whether they're clients or whether they're bosses or whether they're people in our personal lives. So when we don't know how to think and feel differently about ourselves and our power, we can get very frustrated and drained and overwhelmed when our outer life doesn't match the way we think it should, right? And that's when we can kind of get into this vicious cycle of waiting for other people to change, waiting for circumstances to change. And you might feel like your current life is frustrating or annoying or draining. But that is because you're continuing to wait for everything to change before you can feel the way that you want to feel. And everybody is on their own timing, right? So I don't want my life to be on hold. I don't want to be held hostage because I'm waiting for something or for someone to be different. I want to love my life right now. I want my joy, my freedom, my peace, my experience to feel love. I want that to be here now. And that leads me to truth number 8, which is to take responsibility for your healing. So just last week, I was speaking to a woman in my Mastering Your Mind program, and she spent so many years in anger, waiting for an apology from someone else who had harmed her. And she didn't get it. And waiting for this apology was blocking her own healing because she needed that other person to see what he had done to her. And that's what we're doing when we're waiting. We're waiting for an apology. We're waiting for something to be different, right? So we're essentially saying to ourselves, I can't heal until that person sees what they did to me, or I can't heal until that part of my life is different. And you might be waiting for your whole life. You're still carrying your anger, your frustration, your grief all these years later, right? And here, life is just continuing to go on. Other people are going on with their lives, right? They don't care that you're angry. They don't care that you're in grief. They're not thinking about it. So I want you to take your own healing, your own growth out of other people's hands. I want you to take it out of the hands of your circumstances. And I want you to be able to take your growth and healing and give it back to yourself. I want you to be able to heal now, not when, but now. And that leads me to the 9th truth, which is to enjoy the process of creation. So you might be working hard towards something and you've seen slow or little progress. And this is when so many people give up, they stop creating. But the beauty of our lives is in the creation, not in the results, it's in the creation. And we can be too focused on our end results and believing that once we get there, we'll be happier, we'll feel more complete, we'll feel more whole. And this has us always focused on our future for our happiness and joy and contentment. And when we're focused on that future, we're never going to reach the level of contentment and joy and peace that we want. We're never going to get to that happy ending. So we have to have patience and enjoy the process of creating. See, we can't stop creating because the creating is what builds the momentum of energy that does give us that beautiful life. But we have to enjoy planting the seeds. We have to trust that those seeds are going to grow. We don't know when. We don't know who's going to come and help those seeds to grow. But the joy is in the planting of the seeds. The joy is in the creation. The joy in our lives is not in the result. It's in the act of creating in and of itself. So those are the 9 truths that I try and live by every day. I have a ton of practices that have me grounded in those truths, because if I'm not in those practices, I'm back on autopilot. So if you are interested in really wanting to take your life to the next level, if you're really wanting to incorporate a very different mind to use to navigate a very different future, you may want to investigate becoming a part of my Mastering Your Mind program. The next one is going to be starting June 4th. Now, this is in 2024. If you're listening to this at another time, and that cohort, that's my 11th cohort. If that's already done, there'll be another cohort. So if you're listening to this at a later time and you're interested in joining a program, it's never too late. But my next one is starting June 4th of 2024. So if you're interested, email me. hello@dethrowingyourinnercritic.com. Email me, let's talk, and let's see if this program is exactly what you need to get your life to a whole different level. Thanks for listening today. Be well, everybody.